Well, hello there, and welcome once again to the Great Stories podcast. This is my favorite podcast because it's my podcast. And what you are listening to is an interview program where I sit across the table from other human beings and we hear about their life story. We hear about what makes them tick, what makes them them. And most importantly, we hear about how they came to know Christ and what it looks like in the context of their real life to follow him. These interviews are long form, they're uninterrupted, unedited, unrehearsed. I send people some stuff ahead of time to get their brains working, but really these conversations is just conversations that I love to have with people. And I figured why not record them so that you can. So if you like what you hear, that's great. You can support the show by sharing the show, the episodes, whether you listen to it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever the platform. Share the show with people because I believe that the message people talk about is worth hearing. That the most important thing somebody could have to say is just what their journey with Christ has looked like. I don't want this show to be great. I don't want Ryan Weber to be great. I want the message of Christ's love and his unconditional grace for his people to be great. Another way you can support the show is by throwing a few dollars this way. We have a Patreon going. Just search for The Great Stories Podcast on there. And of course, the last way you can support the show is by coming on it. Your story is unique to you. But that said, there's a lot of people out there who would resonate deeply with what you have to say. I promise. For every one person that sits across the table from me, there's 10,000 others who would say, "That's me." So come on the show. Talk to me. It's not so scary. Right on. I'm easy to talk to. It's my thing. So today, I got to sit down with a really cool, just a true gentleman. Somebody that I've known for a few years, and I've heard bits and pieces of his story, bits and pieces of just the chunks of his life, some of his experiences. He's one of those guys that it seems like he's lived about 4 times. Truly, and he's not done yet. It was a great discussion for me about just what faith is. What is obedience? What does it mean to say that you will follow Christ wherever he leads? And I think there's just the twists and turns of his life are they're inspiring, honestly. I had to take some time after the interview to just examine myself, and I think that's the point of this whole podcast, is that somebody else's journey with Christ would make you consider yours. So I hope you enjoy my talk with Carl Medford as much as we enjoyed recording it. Here we go. Carl Medford, thank you for inviting me into your home. And you're welcome. Letting me chat with you today. This is cool. Mm-hmm. It's been a while since I've been here. You weren't kidding though. There's a lot of work going on outside, so
that is correct.
I had to tiptoe around your concrete. Yeah. So how's I guess I haven't talked to you for well over a year. The last I saw you was at our Res Kids little day retreat thing we did over in Pescadero, wherever that was.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That was when you cooked, in my opinion, the best sous vide steak that I think I've had to date.
We try.
I don't remember every meal, but I remember the ones that stand
funny.
out to me. That was
That's
good.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. So how's the last year been for you? Like, what's going on?
It's been a pretty challenging year in a lot of ways. We've obviously been dealing with COVID-19.
Right.
It has affected our industry quite a bit, and so the level of sales and everything's been down. So we've been scrambling with different income projections, things like that.
Yeah.
Running a large team like we have, just conscious of all the different lives that I impact and the decisions that I make.
Right.
You know, it's obviously care for them first and foremost. And we managed to keep everybody on salary through the entire year. So that was actually really good.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to sort of start working our way out of it at this point. So we didn't set any records this year, but we ended up we've been blessed, no question. So yeah.
What is your business? I want to get more into it, but just folks that don't know.
I run a large real estate team here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We cover the majority of the Bay Area, and then we have expansion locations. San Jose South, we've got one in Elk Grove. We've got another down in the Monterey, Santa Cruz area. So we cover a pretty large territory.
Okay. And is this primarily residential, commercial?
It is 100% residential.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a dividing line between residential and commercial. You're either typically one or the other.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very different.
It's not
rules and
different animal in every way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So who's your typical client for this? Are you just home buyers, or is there anyone you specialize in?
We specialize in first-time buyers.
Yeah.
But we typically in a given year will sell about 60%. 60% of our sales are going to be people selling their homes, a lot of them moving out of the area, and then 40% approximately every year are buyers.
Okay. Why 60% first time buyers? Is that typical or
40%?
40.
Well, 40% buyers, 60% sellers.
Okay.
It's just we're very, very focused on the listing side of things because the company that controls the listings in any given market really is the company that controls the market. And so we want to focus more on listings. So my primary job on the team, in addition to leading the team, providing the framework and structure for the entire team, my job primarily has been to work with sellers.
Right. Okay.
And we've got other agents on the team that work primarily with buyers.
Okay. And so are you anticipating the market picking up for you guys? Is it like you're saying?
For a number of reasons, there's just no homes to sell right now. And that's been the issue. We saw a 30% decrease in volume. In 2019, we ended up number one for the number of homes sold in Alameda County across all companies.
Wow.
So, yeah, we were pretty excited about that.
Congrats.
We saw a 30% decline in homes sold in 2020, but that was a direct correlation to the fact that 30% less homes were actually sold in Alameda County in 2020. So if we had had the homes to sell, I think we would have probably done the same. But a number of reasons. The inventory's been down. Yeah. But the market currently is exceptionally hot due to the fact that we're into a third year now with a historic shortage of inventory. Nationwide, we have never seen as few listings as we have currently, or I should say as we do not have currently. And so our job, our main priority day in, day out, is to try to locate sellers who, for whatever reason, have not been selling, and help them understand, first of all, where the market's going, help them get over any obstacles they may have. And the vast majority of our sellers right now are moving out of state. They're moving to Boise and Sparks, Reno. They're moving to Bend, Oregon, Arizona. I mean, all over the place. Texas by the boatload. Even the Carolinas, which has been kind of interesting to us. Moving from earthquakes to hurricanes. I'm not sure I would make that choice.
I'll take an earthquake every decade.
Yes, over a hurricane every 3 months. Right.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I have never, just anecdotally in my experience, I've never talked to more people who seem to be considering that. It seems like it comes up often, like how long are you going to stay, or that conversation.
Yeah. I write for 2 Bay Area newspapers. I've got a weekly column, and then I'm also a featured author for Inman News, which is a national real estate news organization. I got a weekly column with them,
Right.
and one of the posts that I just put out recently is top 7 reasons that sellers are going to make a choice when we get to the end of COVID. And number 1 is they're just sick of California. They're just sick of the government. They're tired of the legislation. They're tired of the way that COVID-19's been handled. Number 2 reason is they're sick of each other. They've been locked up in these houses now for a year, and they just want to get out. And it's actually with funny.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
We got to go. Something's got to change. This is not working.
No. And with permission from a lot of companies like Facebook and others, Google, to work anywhere on the planet.
Yeah. Right.
We're moving Facebook employees to Boise.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always thought of myself as a California loyalist until probably 6 months, maybe. And it's like, well, I wonder what else is out there. I don't see myself running to Boise anytime soon, but I'll let you know if I do. Right?
Yeah, please do.
Is that what you do? You knock on people's doors and give them pamphlets for Nevada and Texas?
we do everything we can to help them along.
Who wants to go? Yeah, right. You're next. Yeah. Man. Okay, well, I'm sure you could talk about real estate all day, but we're more interested in some other stuff. So I first kind of got familiar with you when we were in a small group together with Glenn, who has moved away, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah, and you were, at least Glenn talked about you as being sort of his theological conscience, I think is what he said. And then you've got some background and training in that world, and that's kind of more what I'm interested to hear about is just your journey as in ministry, and just kind of what put you together here. I also have some questions about your hobbies, cooking and all this, but
there you go.
We'll hit that for sure.
Okay.
I got to learn that sous vide recipe. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, let's just kind of go back as far as you do. Help me understand who you are, how you came to know Christ, and just kind of what goes into making you.
Accepted Christ when I was 4 years old, so I don't have a vivid recollection of that event. I was told by my mother my first prayer was, "Thank you, Lord, for ducks." Yes. Not sure what the background of that was, but went to Bible college. Actually, I graduated from high school a year earlier than most people did, so I got accepted conditionally into Bible college. I went to Bible college because I really didn't have a plan. I went in as a music major, ironically, not as a theology major.
Okay. And
it just seemed like the thing to do. I had no idea what I was going to do there other than, get a degree. And ended up getting kicked out after my first year.
Oh, no. What? Okay.
Yeah, I was told, because I was a year to 2 years younger than everybody else in my class to start with. And so they said, and I really had no interest in studying. So I'd never had to study in school, so I thought, why should I bother here?
Right.
They said, just come on back when you decide to grow up.
So, oh, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So the music part of it, I didn't know you were a musical guy. Are you still musical in any way, or what was that?
Yeah, in fact, I ended up, the irony is the only degree that I have is a fine arts degree in music.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
What was your specialty?
Ironically, choral conducting. Believe
Okay.
it, yeah, with
Yeah.
a minor invoice, and yeah, hard to believe.
Choral conducting. I didn't know that was even a
Thing.
thing.
Right? Yeah, it's not that much anymore. I mean, this was back in the day
Yeah.
when large churches had
Right.
large choirs, large music programs.
Yeah.
Many had bands or orchestras, things like that. We're talking the larger churches.
Right.
And so the irony is, going to college, I had made up my mind I was never ever going to work for a church. So,
Okay.
so after I graduated, I actually went to work for Safeway, and was kind of trying to figure out what my options were. So during the year that I was out, I worked for Sears for a while in their warehouse, assembling bicycles and functioning as a janitor for their main warehouse. And this is all in Canada.
Yeah.
And then ended up as their bicycle repairman slash assembler. If you've ever been to a store and seen 1,000 bicycles in a row, I was the guy that put those together.
Yeah. Okay.
And then after I stayed out a year, the college let me back in. I was actually going to go into pre-med at that point. My dad was a doctor, and ironically, my daughter now is a surgeon. But it seemed like God had other ideas. So at the very last minute, a week before I was supposed to go into pre-med, someone just asked me an off-the-wall question, why don't you go back to Bible school? And I didn't have an answer. And the more I thought about it, the more God impressed on me that's where I should be. So called up to college, and last minute they let me in. Again, on probation. So
They remembered you?
they remembered me just fine, yes.
Oh, taking another shot, are you? Well,
right, yeah. So I ended up in my degree, worked for Safeway, and over the years, when I come to major pivotal points in my life, God's actually spoken in some really clear ways.
Yeah.
So I was working at Safeway, and in those days, Safeway phone numbers were unlisted, and so was working at the store, and somebody called me, and they said, you got a long-distance phone call from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I was in Calgary at that point in time, and if you ever got a call from Vancouver, everybody knew that was where Visa headquarters for Canada was, and that meant you were behind on your Visa payments.
Okay.
So, great.
Don't answer that one.
What have I done? So it was a huge mystery how they'd actually gotten the Safeway phone number. It turns out that the director of Canada Safeway's father went to the church that was calling me. So I was getting a call from a church asking me to come to Vancouver and to a candidate for the position of pastor for music. And I just right off the top said, not interested, thanks, have a great day.
Right.
And then I had been on my lunch break, so I hung up the phone, headed back to the stairs to go upstairs to the lunchroom, and halfway up the stairs, God said, you are interested. Just like that. Oh, who knew?
So explain that, though, when you say like, what did you hear or feel or experience? Like, how does that message come across?
It's
to you?
never an audible voice.
Right.
But over the years, God's spoken very, very clearly.
Yeah.
Very clearly. And so there was no doubt that by the time I got to the top of the stairs that I'd be going to Vancouver.
I'm interested.
I'm interested. So
Wow.
Called my wife at work. She was paralegal. And one of the things that we had to do was put together a philosophy of ministry. And I sketched out some things. And at work, this is the day before really, computers as we know them. She worked for a law firm that had AES word processors. These were the very first word processing product on the market, even before Wang, any of those guys.
What year about would this be?
This was 79, 1979, 1980.
Yeah, that's very early then.
Very, very early, yeah. So got married in 78, and after college. She put together a comprehensive philosophy of ministry that when I saw it, when she got home, when she brought it home that night for me to look at, I would have sworn I wrote it. I mean, it was just it's unbelievable. We'd only been married 6 months. And by the way, I never would recommend anybody that you take a job in full-time ministry after being married for 6 months. Not a good idea.
Let me write that down.
Yeah.
It's good advice.
But, God has other plans. And
Yes.
so we told everybody that we were getting an all-expense-paid trip to Vancouver, BC, which was, in February in the middle of the Canadian prairies.
Yep.
That was a good move.
You're going to the big town. Okay.
Yeah, and where it was warm. So got in the plane, went to Vancouver, and long and short of it, they offered me the job. So we moved a few months later and started in full-time ministry. After 5 years, left there and transferred down to a position here in Fremont at what was then Fremont Neighborhood Church. Position there was pastor for music and administration. And over the years, 19 years there, evolved into the position of senior pastor for the congregation.
Okay. Is that, what church is that now? What's the name of that now?
It's Cedars.
That's right.
On Cedar Boulevard.
Right.
It became Cedar Boulevard Neighborhood Church.
Right.
And grew to a congregation of about 1,000.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man. So let me go back through some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Interested about this stairway thing. When you say that God tells you something, and this is a question that I get asked a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you have too. How in your mind does God's voice or urgings differ from, in your mind, like your own ideas or your own thoughts or just your kind of inner monologue and all that? How do you make that distinction between the two?
Well, you just know. One of the things that we taught when I was at Neighborhood Church was how to listen to God's voice. And it's like anything. If you spend enough time in the Word, if you spend enough time listening and understanding what He sounds like, then when you actually hear His voice speak, it's recognizable.
Yeah.
It's never going to be contradictory to His Word.
Yes.
And it's not going to be a destructive voice. It's not going to be a voice that tears you down. It's going to be a voice that's encouraging, that's providing direction. And it's a voice that can be agreed by sharing with others. There will be agreement. So it's not like you're an island out there. The thing is, when God's speaking to one person, He's always speaking to others at the same time. And so and that's why in Matthew 18:20, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. There's that agreement. And when those that are hearing the voice of God together collectively come,
right,
then it's simply a matter of accepting what God's already said.
There's the struggle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah.
I've been through a few times where it seems like He talks to the other people before me, and I just don't want to hear it.
Right.
No. I don't know what you're talking about. And then finally, I'm clued in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, hearing God's voice is the foundation of the Christian walk, because if you don't hear God's voice, don't know how to hear, don't recognize it, don't have the ability to discern what He's saying, then you really can't walk in faith. Because faith, according to Romans 5:17, faith comes from hearing, and hearing by the Word of God.
Right.
So faith literally is hearing, agreeing, and doing.
Right.
If you can't hear, you really can't walk in faith.
Yeah, it's a big expression of your just a relationship. Like a
right.
Right. Yeah, I when you say don't take on full-time ministry 6 months married, I'm so curious about that. Like, what are
Well,
how does ministry challenge
um,
that relationship?
a lot of it has to do with whether or not the ministry you're going to is healthy or not.
Mm.
And the one we went to was not.
Mm.
And so it was very challenging for us. It was very hard in our relationship from the perspective that neither one of us were really prepared for it. I wasn't trained for it.
Yeah, this is out of your first year back to
I had
college, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I knew about music. I didn't know about shepherding. I didn't, because a lot of those classes just weren't required for someone in a music program.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had to take basic theology classes and things like that. So it was just, and then nobody had taught us. A very interesting thing here. I mean, you come from a church like Resonate or a church like Cedar Boulevard Neighborhood Church where transparency and vulnerability are huge. Where you're not walking around trying. There's a difference between a church where you can be vulnerable, where you can be real, where you can be in process, versus a church where how it looks is what matters.
Right.
And our first church was literally the first church of how it looks is what matters. So
that was their denomination.
Yeah, and we were told we couldn't have friends in the congregation because there had to be a clear line between the clergy and the congregation. We couldn't have friends.
As the staff,
right?
To the
we couldn't. I mean,
that's odd.
It's ridiculous. That's what it is. It's a totally flawed concept of ministry, but we didn't know any better,
right?
And so those were difficult years. So at the end of those 5 years, we were quite glad to leave. So an interesting thing, part of my responsibility at that church, the first church, was not only to run the music program, but to run the TV program as well. So we ran a half-hour news-based, I won't say news-based, it was sort of an interview-based format where we would have interviews. And during the tenure of that program, we got 2 national news scoops. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed that part of the job. But I mean, you ran it by the stopwatch. So my job was to be the associate director, and I was the guy in the back of the control room, literally running the show, putting the show together, making sure everything flowed smoothly. And we took that mindset into our services as well. These were back in the days where Robert Schuller was king of the airwaves, and that was sort of the model that we wanted for our Sunday morning services.
Right.
In fact, they even came up at one point and helped to some degree shape things.
Where was this broadcast at? Just Vancouver?
Vancouver. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when things are based on how it looks, then you can't really have problems.
No.
And you certainly can't, if you're told you can't, if you can't share, you can't be real with the people in your congregation, then not only can you not have problems, but you certainly don't have anybody to share them with.
Right.
And so the pressure and the whole thing really started putting major strain on our marriage, and we almost didn't make it. So we heard about the opportunity down here in Fremont. Every Canadian's dreams live in California. Don't ask me why. And so we told everybody, just like we had said when we were going to Vancouver, hey, we got an all-expense-paid trip to San Francisco Bay Area.
Wow. And
so we came down here. And we had sent ahead a bunch of video from the TV show and things like that. It was a much larger church in Vancouver than we were coming to down here, and everybody was kind of wondering, why would you leave something like that?
Right.
And in fact, when the movers drove up to pick us up, a couple of guys from the church down here drove a semi up to pick up everything. And I gave them a tour through the church up there, and they just looked at me and, why would you leave something like this?
Yeah.
Well,
why? Yeah, good question.
Yeah, so we came down here, and for 1 week we experienced what I would call authentic Christianity.
Authentic Christianity?
Authentic Christianity.
Wow. Okay.
We experienced, for the first time, a group of people who were deeply interested in each other's spiritual well-being, who had didn't have lofty standards, wanted to be real. In fact, the senior pastor frequently said that what he would like to see on his tombstone, not that he would see it, but he was what he appeared to be. Fully authentic, fully transparent. And we've
how refreshing.
It was I wouldn't even use the word refreshing. We had never experienced anything like that. So much so that on the plane on the way home, we both agreed that we would, if they didn't call us to this church, we'd figure out a way to move down here and go there.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah, it was huge. And then we found out later they did call us, and we found out it was in spite of the video and everything that we.
Like, we're not impressed.
Not impressed.
Oh.
You know, this is great TV, but it's not what we're looking for.
Okay.
Not what we're looking for. It took us quite a while to learn to be vulnerable and to learn to be transparent.
Yeah. What does that? How does that get opened up in you? Because it's one thing to be attracted to it.
I think just getting hit over the head continuously with it. Just being reminded day in, day out, you know, we don't work like that here. You know, I see what you're doing. I see where you're going. It was just accountability. And I think part of it too was just we were so hungry and desperate for simple Christianity that we were willing to stick with it, if you will.
You know, you're the second person to say almost that same scenario of going somewhere, experiencing something like that, and then deciding to move there regardless of the position. I think it was Will Medell, and he said it. I think when I interviewed him, he said that similar thing. It's like I have to be where this is. Like, this is different.
Yep.
Man. So tell me a little bit about like some of the other contrasts from Canada to California. I've never been north of the border, but I'd imagine it was somewhat of a culture shock in a few ways, right?
Well, yes and no. So I was born in Kansas.
Okay.
So I firmly believe that the Wizard of Oz does not have a happy ending.
No.
Because Dorothy has to go back to Kansas. So we moved to Canada when I was quite young, 1.5, 2 years old. My mom was Canadian. My dad was American. They met in college.
Okay.
And his business in the States failed. And so my mom said, let's move to Canada. So off we went. And so I essentially grew up in an American household.
Okay.
In what was then Edmonton, Alberta. So much so that although there was some characteristic words, and there's a couple of words still that will if you really listen, will catch me out. The majority, the majority of people that I encountered when I was ever visiting the States always assumed I was from the Pacific Northwest because that was my accent functionally. So
right.
Other than 5 or 6 different words, garage, yeah, Mazda, things like that. well, we can recognize Canadians instantly when they come down and they talk about putting their car in a parkade.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got a garburator in their kitchen that grinds up all the stuff they put down the sink.
Garburator?
Garburator, yes. Yeah, so...
I like that.
Yeah, but it really wasn't... It was a little harder on my wife. Cheryl had a bit more... And she still says a couple of words funny. But we listen, especially to my brother-in-law. It's a hoot, eh?
There's moose running around everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And then you got to relearn spelling on a bunch of words, like theater in Canada is spelled Theatre, and
theatre.
Yeah, and favor is Favour. So I mean, a lot of the English spellings. Yeah, so
I would not survive.
No, well, spell check's a beautiful thing.
Thank God for spell check.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially since I write so much now. Yeah.
I owe at least 10 perceived IQ points to spell check.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd be exposed.
Yeah. One of the things that we did discover, interestingly enough, Canadian educational system in a lot of ways is dramatically superior to what goes on down here. So to the degree that a lot of in grade 12 in many of the Canadian schools is first year university down here.
Right.
So we could definitely see that.
What do they do different?
Hard to say, I mean, they just you're in school longer for a start.
Longer days.
Okay. Americans, we always could never figure out why our cousins down here in the States were not in school in June. Because we only had 2 months off. So we had July and August off, and that was it. So those, and that's basically all the summer you get in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah. What else are you going to do?
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah, I grew up around here, so I have I get to see the integration side of things, and I watch people's accents slowly go away, and I see their clothing changes, and they sort of melt into things. Yeah. So you said 19 years as in total at Neighborhood, or
correct? Yep.
How much of that was music? Administrative?
Probably about the first 5 years was music, and then I transitioned that over to others.
Okay.
Cheryl actually took over for me, and then moved into the role of administrative pastor as the church was growing. At one point with the school, there were 75 people on staff. So it was my job to make sure the machine ran smoothly.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound kind of funny, but what a lot of people don't realize is that a large church in the state of California is a large multi-million-dollar corporation.
Right.
And you've got to run it like a corporation. You've got all the recording responsibilities, accountability to. Yep. You can't make mistakes, otherwise you lose your tax exempt status. And you're running payroll, you're running budgets. It's so that was functionally my job for years. And then when the senior pastor left, was asked to become senior pastor myself.
Yeah. So how did that work? Because you don't misunderstand me, but coming from the education and experience, it had to have been a very different experience for you to move into a senior pastor type position, because you were, I'm assuming, preaching and
so
all the bit, right?
Well, there's a little more to it than that. I'm a deep introvert, and I am. Everybody that really knows me well will tell you this. I'm not a people person.
Right.
I'm not warm and fuzzy. I've had a lot of people I come across as arrogant, aloof, Not because I want to. It's just because I'm just wired that way. And so
Right.
Cheryl has over the years kind of rubbed off a lot of the rough edges. But what I'm very good at is building systems and overseeing organizations. And we really, when you're leading a large church, that's a pretty important thing to do. So
Right.
I've been told many times I'm a gifted communicator. So whether it's writing or teaching, I never was a preacher per se. Love to teach exegetically through the scriptures, a book at a time. And there was a lot of fruit to that. But the congregation, the pastoral selection committee that was looking at various options when our previous senior pastor left, said, we think you're the man for the job, but we also realize that you're not a people person and that you're going to need to surround yourself with people that are. And so I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, ironically, the exact same thing is true in my business today. My job is run the organization, and I surround myself with people that are really good at loving people.
Wow.
There's a standard joke between my wife and I. So we would have multiple services on a Sunday morning, and I would go back and hide in my office between services to recharge.
Right.
Because very draining.
Yeah.
Very, very draining. So really, when the service was over, my goal was to get back to her as quickly as I could, just to take that half hour and kind of get the energy back again, and just be quiet for a little bit and not have to deal with people. And so one Sunday, a gal came up to Cheryl and said, I don't think Carl likes me. And
because he runs away from
and Cheryl said, well, what do you mean? And Cheryl said, well, I passed him in the hallway and he didn't, seem to say hi or anything. And Cheryl said, trust me, honey, he didn't even see you. And so
I like that.
She was on the backside kind of, cleaning up the mess behind the elephant, if
Right.
you will, Yeah.
That's funny.
That's real.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. You said 5 services? No.
No, we had 3.
3.
3
Okay.
on Sundays. And for a while, we had one on Saturday nights as well.
That's a long
It was a long day.
4 services. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard you drop little gems just through our little study that we were doing, and so I can see that kind of analytical, kind of wringing out truth of Scripture from you. I think there's a lot of fruit in that. There's a lot of folks will, when they talk about Scripture reading in particular, they'll say, "Oh, I read the whole Bible in a month," or all these things. And my question is always, "Yeah, but what did you learn? Like, what's in there? Like, what did you get out of it?"
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, I think the thing that helped me is, first of all, I'm a student. I read prolifically and still do. And I have a deep desire to communicate truth at the most fundamental level in a way that you get past the fluff and get to the one thing that's going to actually help change somebody's life.
Yep.
So would spend on average 30 hours a week studying for a 45-minute message.
yeah.
And that's probably the one thing that I miss the most. Just being able to have that time to just dig in and study at that level, day in, day out, week upon week.
Yeah. And you're talking Scripture itself, commentaries on it, topical studies, maybe some little bit of Greek probably thrown in there.
More than a little bit. Yeah, and Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've never taken theology classes, but I've immersed myself. I could probably write the final exam just fine, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think you do all right.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what theological study is. It's the study of theology. So,
Right.
I think there's a lot of people who would make the case that says that a seminary degree doesn't necessarily mean what we would think.
Yeah, and there's parts of a seminary degree that are just absolutely funny. Many people call it a cemetery degree, but I mean, and I would walk past the chapel and I would see this as the guys that were in the seminary department would be doing practice weddings on each other. Do you, Bob? Take you, Bill?
No.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh,
No.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
No, they'd be practicing the ceremony. They would go down to the swimming pool and practice baptisms. And I mean, just all kinds of crazy things. While we were sitting down in the basement in the practice rooms, pounding out scales down there.
That I've never even considered that. Okay.
Yeah, that's the practicum.
Yeah, I guess so.
Part of it.
That's maybe a lab credit or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how do you run a funeral? I mean,
my.
that's important stuff to know.
I guess that's good to know. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first time somebody asked me to marry him. It was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Someone asked me to marry them.
Yeah.
I've never done that.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I should probably think about that.
You should probably figure out what that looks like.
Yeah, what do I say? Am I in charge or what are we doing?
Exactly.
We're supposed to say things at some point, right?
You're supposed to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
There's something you said to me when we were in a small group together. I don't even know if you remember it, but I have used this phrase on myself. I've led I don't know how many other people. You have no idea. This one thing you said to me just in passing, like it seriously impacted like the way that I approach dating, actually. And because I have a group of high school seniors at the church that I've been with for I think since they were 7th grade, and just the I forget how it came up. We were talking about it because I was complaining about being single or something like that, and you had said, and this probably isn't a direct quote, but you said that if you make your relationship with her about seeing her blossom and glory to her Creator, then the decisions you make regarding that will do the same. And I was, holy cow.
Yeah, that flows out of Genesis 3,
Yeah.
ironically. And the church has done such damage over the years. In Genesis 3, it talks about the curse. And first he talks to Satan. He says what's going to happen to him. And then he talks about the woman and how going to have pain in childbirth, and your desire will be for your husband. And I always thought, that's pretty cool, And the church, evidently throughout the ages has said the same thing, women, you're to have a desire for your husband. And but the problem is you don't understand what that Hebrew word really meant. It only shows up twice in the Old Testament. And the next verse, and we just heard this in the sermon last week, where sin is crouching at your door and its desire is to rule over you. The curse is Eve is going to have a desire to rule over Adam. That's the curse.
Yeah.
And it's not this warm fuzzy thing that the church has always made it out to be. And then the husband, his part of the whole curse was, and he's going to now try to get on top of Eve. So Eve's trying to get on top of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to try to get on top of her. And now you have this beautiful, warm, loving, fuzzy relationship. Now
Right.
you got war.
Yep.
That's the curse.
Yep.
That's why it's called the curse. But the church has for years said the husband's to rule over the wife and the wife's to submit, and that desire to be for the husband. And, we've been preaching the curse.
Yep. Yep.
If you go to Ephesians 5.
That's a different picture.
Right. But even then we've managed to bend it, and tweak it out of proportion. But husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her to make her holy and blameless. And what that literally means is the husband is to die to his will, his ambitions, his desire, and his role in the marriage is to be exactly the same as Christ to the church,
right,
to the point of death, to come underneath and lovingly support and nurture and strengthen, so that in the same way that Christ died so the church can be everything that we were designed and made to be, holy, blameless, the husband is to come under the wife.
Yeah, that flips it on its head in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You don't hear that taught a lot. We're starting to hear it now. But when I sat through dozens of sermons in my life where the wife was told just flat out submit to the husband, and the husband's going to rule over you, and that's the curse.
Well, you're for sure hearing me teach it. Know that. Because the way I've processed that concept of submission is that, from my perspective, I'm not a woman, obviously, but what woman would resist this passage if they truly believed that the man they're submitting to is completely for them? Mm-hmm. It's not a ruling over or do what I say, sit down, be quiet, woman, cook dinner, do dishes. It's I am, like, my decision process actually accounts for you before me.
Right.
And I'm here to serve you. I want to see you flourish and blossom and reach, who you're supposed to be in your Creator's will. And like, it's not an adversarial thing. That's my take on it.
No.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, all that to say, I took that, like, 2 sentences you said to heart, 4 years ago, however long that was. It's true.
Well,
I believe
it wasn't the first one that said it, I think.
You said it to me.
Paul said it pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you said it then. I'll give you credit.
All right.
So before we get too far, I need to get into the cooking side of you. I think this is... So all I've heard is other people tell me how this happened. But you're essentially capable of producing, like, 5-star restaurant quality meals. That's the rumor. I've eaten 3, I think, over the years. And how did this happen? How did you get into that? Like, how did you put this together for me?
Oh boy. I have one gift. I have a very annoying gift. My gift, literally, is the ability to figure out how to do something.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a very annoying gift.
Right.
So whatever it is I set my mind to do, I can figure out how to do it, and I can figure out how to do it at an epic level.
Yeah. There's no 80%.
There's no 80%.
Okay.
No. So, yeah, and that's kind of the way. That's why we ended up number 1 in Alameda County.
Right.
That's just, if it's there to do it right. And, truth be known, it doesn't take much more effort to create a restaurant quality meal in the same amount of time that you can put together something out of a box. You know, it really doesn't. So my goal's always been, and when you're working with people all day long every day, it just drains the life out, you know, and cooking energizes and puts back in.
Yeah.
It's creative. I'm a very creative person. It's just fun.
So when did that switch get flipped for culinary stuff?
I think it kind of evolved. When we were at the church, I had a much more flexible schedule than Cheryl did. Cheryl taught piano in our home for years,
right.
And so she would be teaching right up to dinner. So it just made more sense for me to cook.
Yeah.
So we have a immutable law in our house. I cook, she bakes, and never the two shall mix.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't try to bake, and she'll cook occasionally, but. And so, it occurred to me, if you're going to cook, just do it right. And that's kind of where it flowed from. And then I, found out as you start getting older, the weight starts coming on a whole lot faster than not. So it became important to start cooking healthy meals.
Yeah.
As well.
Right.
Yeah.
So where do you look for ingredients? Like where's your secret meat market? I know you have like these.
I am deep despair of the quality of food markets in the Fremont area.
Dang it!
It is. It's a sad thing. So I'll. If you really want produce. You got to go to the Berkeley Bowl. If you really want higher quality ingredients, you're going to need to go to some place like Dreger's or someplace like that.
Right.
Ironically, so typically my day when I was working in the office per se, I would stop working. I start every morning at 5:30.
Yeah.
I would stop at 4 and then hit the grocery store on the way home, and whatever's in the store, either on sale or available, then that would become the menu. So it's always in flux. And the real advantage to cooking like that, you only buy what you need for that meal.
Yeah.
So it's 100% fresh, and you only cook exactly what you need for the meal. There's almost never leftovers. And then I started plating every meal as well. And then once you start doing that, then it's a matter of, okay, now you want to make this look like it came from a restaurant. So you start learning how to plate. And so, I mean, that's kind of how it evolved over the years. So typically we'll just plate it, and we plate only what we're going to eat. So there is no waste. So, I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so you do this pretty much
every day.
Now, what's on the menu tonight? If I stick around long enough,
well, on the menu tonight, I'm going to go outside the bubble a little bit. It's going to be the best mac and cheese you've ever had in your entire life.
Oh man,
it'll be grilled colossal shrimp.
Wow,
and a salad.
Okay. Gourmet mac.
Yeah.
No Kraft box mac and cheese for you?
Not allowed through the front door.
No, you.
No. And that's the other thing too. So we don't snack. We because we're at the age where we really need to focus on eating healthy.
Right.
And mac and cheese is definitely a step away from that. Normally we have very low carb diets.
Yeah.
So we eat a lot of fish.
Right.
So we just don't have snacks in the house. I found if you don't want to eat snacks like potato chips, popcorn, stuff
Yeah.
like that. You just don't bring it through the front door.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
Right.
So
Yeah. I've discovered that I am not allowed to have cereal in the house.
right.
Because if there's a box of something, I'll eat it,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I do the thing where you pour the cereal and then you have the milk. You eat the cereal, but there's milk left, so you add cereal. But then you add too much cereal, so you gotta add more milk.
Mm-hmm.
It's a vicious cycle.
Vicious cycle. Yeah, no, cereal's not allowed in our front door.
So when it comes to, let's just talk beef for a minute.
Mhm.
So when you're gonna do a steak,
Mm-hmm.
let's say I don't know, a New York steak, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a griller? Are you a sous vide preference? A bake? Like what is your, like if you wanted to make the best possible New York steak tonight, what are you looking for?
I'm gonna go find a very well marbled steak first of all,
Okay.
and that's a part of the challenge right out the gate, trying to find that. You know, ironically, and this can sound really, really funny, but Costco has some of the best meat around.
Okay.
I really don't like buying steaks from Safeway because I don't know where they source them, but so Costco, again, after a while, you just learn what to look for. But
Yeah.
for a steak, I would typically sous vide it, and I like a medium rare, so you're going to be putting them in the sous vide around 122, 123 degrees, something like that.
Yeah.
And then you're going to hit it on the grill real quick, just to brown the outside, and that's that. And the beauty of doing it that way is it'll never be overdone.
Right.
The sous vide actually
Doesn't dry out.
tenderizes it,
Yeah.
which works especially good for filet mignon, things like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Are you seasoning before they go in the bag or?
Both.
Okay.
Season before they go in the bag. And what happens a lot of times in the bag is that when the meat starts losing the liquid stays in the bag, but then you pull it out and the liquid's where the spice is.
You just have brown liquid.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to re-season it just before you throw it on a grill.
Okay. Well, I know what I'm doing then later today.
Can't go wrong.
Yeah.
The trick is having a sous vide. I've got a couple of them.
Yeah.
And
I haven't got that yet. Maybe that's my next toy.
there you go.
I picked up a salt slab a few years back, and I've been playing around with that big pink brick. You put it right on the stovetop,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay, but it does make things very salty. They'll come out. Sometimes it's like a little too much.
Right.
Sous vide. All right, I have to get into that. I'm gonna look it up now.
Yeah. The other fun thing is to take. A lot of people tell me they don't like vegetables. Well, I contend that it's because they've never had them done right.
Yeah.
So I'm passionate first of all about making people believers in Jesus Christ, and then I'm passionate second about making them believers in vegetables. And,
All right.
yeah, and I've lost count of the hundreds and hundreds of times I've heard, "Boy, I've never had vegetables like this before." You know, so
What's your specialty? You do sprouts? Do you do Brussels sprouts or
all of it. You name it,
anything veggie?
I'll do it.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I forget what you made for that retreat that we did.
That was filet mignon with béarnaise, and then it was
yes.
for one group, and then the other group had seared
Yeah.
salmon with béarnaise.
I think I had both.
Yeah,
I was both groups usually.
yeah.
It was good. Well, I have more ministry questions for you. So, 19 years in neighborhood church, and you're not there anymore. What was the transition from ministry to what would you call it? Private sector,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, really.
How did that work out?
I came to the conclusion I had led as far as I could lead after 19 years. And the last 2 years I was there weren't a lot of fun. I mean, lovely people, loved the congregation, and but I really had lost my passion, had lost my vision, and the people that I had on my staff were kind of intent on going in a different direction. And so I either had to fire everybody and start over again, and I just had no heart. I had no energy left for that. And
Right.
so I sat down in my office, and this was 2001, and I said, Lord, I really need you to speak. And he did, and I wrote it down. And he said, first of all, you're free to go. I'm a very loyal person, and that was I had to have his permission,
Right.
to go. Otherwise, I would still be there. And he said, don't leave the area. When a pastor resigns a church, you always leave the area, because you don't want in any way. In fact, we were told, it was a huge shock to the congregation when I left. It was out of left field, and essentially I fired myself. That's really what happened.
Okay.
There's all kinds of versions out there of what happened, but that's essentially what happened. And people would call up and say, wherever you're going, let us know. We want to come with you. And
Going home.
yeah.
You can't come there.
Which I'll get to in a minute, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But so he said, first of all, you're free to leave. Second, he said, don't leave the area, which was very atypical. So that made it harder for our kids, actually, because they still wanted to go to neighborhood church, and we couldn't.
Right.
We couldn't. And some of the kids are back there now, but grandkids. But then he said, don't go looking for a job. Job's going to come to you. And then he said, and I was just writing this down. And then he said, I'm going to take care of you. And I put down my pen and looked at the pad of paper. And I went, okay. So this was on a Tuesday, sitting in my office at neighborhood church. I went home and told Cheryl, and she did cartwheels up and down the street.
Yeah.
She had seen.
She knew.
She knew.
Yeah.
She knew. And again, the congregation was incredible. I had led past my ability to lead any further. And next morning, I got a phone call, and the guy on the other end of the phone, I knew him. He'd been a friend for years. He said, Carl, I know you're really, really busy, but I got an idea that just won't go away. I said, well, Mark, I might not be as busy as you thought.
And I think I already know why you're calling.
That was my job.
Yeah. What was that?
Runs an asset management company, and this was back during the dot bomb, and he was looking for places to allocate clients' funds.
Yep.
Other than the tech sector. And so we agreed to begin to put together an investment entity where we would buy homes, hold or fix them up and sell them. So it meant me putting together a construction company. It meant me getting licensed as a realtor. It meant me getting a contractor's license.
Wow. Okay.
And all that. So this was the week before Mother's Day, and I had all of that in place in October. So I got my license in real estate October 29th, 2001.
Okay.
Contractor's license shortly after that. And so I got a General B license, general contractor license.
Right.
And just in case you're wondering how a pastor would get a contractor's license, I had built a lot of houses prior to that. So
you had that.
I had the knowledge.
Yeah, because
so
you have to document hours of trade experience.
you do.
all
And
that.
so the interesting thing is, part of, you've got to have X amount of hours of experience within the last 10 years.
Right.
And by virtue of the fact that we had, as a church, done a lot of ongoing maintenance and ongoing property acquisition and development, that all qualified.
Wow.
So I had another licensed GC validate my hours and sign off for me, and that was that.
Wow.
I fully qualified.
Funny how that works, right?
It's
Yeah.
when God's got something up his
Yeah.
sleeve, he's going to make it happen. So so we literally formed a construction company, got behind a large entity here in the Bay Area doing high-end residential construction projects for them. And it took off, and then on a whim, I just decided to write a letter to everybody in the congregation explaining what I was now doing, and by the way, if they wanted to buy or sell a house, give me a call. I had no intention of being a realtor,
Right.
ever. Huh. In fact, truth be known, didn't have a really good impression of the industry for a number of reasons. And the congregation responded, and my business took off. And got nominated Rookie of the Year in Real Estate my first year while I was working part-time.
Wow.
Running a construction company full-time. It was just crazy. God.
Wow. What a ride.
Yeah. And the other thing that he said in the middle of all that was, he said, I want you to not go to church for 6 months. And that was just anathema to us, because that's what you do on a weekend. You go to church. I mean, that was bred into us. We were both Christians from an early age.
Right.
And he said, no, he said, you need to figure out who I am apart from the church. Because all we knew was the church.
Yeah.
And so we stayed out for 6 months. We'd go to Costco on a Sunday morning and go, oh, this is where everybody is on Sunday morning.
That's where they are today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that made it very easy for us to say to people that were saying, where are you attending? And we just said, you're not going to be able to attend where we're attending. And that was that.
So you didn't move, you didn't leave. You still lived in Fremont. Were you in this house? Or
yeah, we were in this house.
Okay. And yeah. And I guess a lot of people know what it's like to miss church for 6 months at this point, but
it was a very strange experience for us.
Very weird. Very weird. When you started going back to a church, what did that look like for you? How did you... Because you're... At that point, I mean, if you're at that church for that long, other pastors, other churches, and like where do you start looking?
Well, we had to go to a church that was a minimum of 30 minutes away, so that
minimum. So you're looking out.
We were
right.
Yeah, we could we literally could not go to a church locally
because they would see you. Like, oh, that's Carl from there.
Yeah. No, I was part of the leadership team of the Ministerial Association across all denominations. And at that point, there was 4 large churches in town. It was what was then First Assembly, E-Free, us. We were the second largest church in town at that point. So, I mean, everybody knew us. Right. Everybody knew me, like it or not.
There's nowhere to hide.
There was nowhere to hide. So,
so what would be the challenge of showing up to let's go to First Assembly, whatever. Like, what would that present?
I know too much. It's very, very, very hard to sit in the back row of a church when you're used to leading.
Yeah.
And I had some issues that I had to deal with as well, and still to some degree today am, because we had a vibrant, alive, dynamic, passionate vision for what we believe God was going to do through us at Neighborhood Church. And in a very real sense, some staff that we had at that particular point in time blew it up. And so I really had to go through the whole death of a dream. And
right,
that was very much like losing a child. Not that I've lost a child, but I can imagine that had been your passion, your dream, your focus for 19 years, and then it's just gone.
Yeah,
instantly gone, with no thought of being able to go back and then you watch other people take what was your dream and reshape and refocus and in their own way blow it up.
Now it's something else. Yeah.
It's a mere shadow of what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 30 minutes or plus. So you're looking Pleasanton.
We were out in Pleasanton.
Across the bay. Yeah.
We were out in Pleasanton for a number of years in a church plant until ironically the staff of that church plant did exactly what happened at Neighborhood, and they blew it up.
Oh.
And so, I mean, the good news was I was there to help that pastor sort through his death of a dream. But then, because we've got three of our kids are African American, one of them came in one morning. She was 10, something like that, and covered with sand. She'd been out rolling in the sandbox. And I thought, what? We said, what are
why?
you doing?
You asked the question, parents, why?
Yeah, why? And she says, well, because I want to be white like you. And we just thought, we can't let that happen. So we had to find a way. So we ended up going to a large black church, and it changed everything. Yeah, they figured out who they were. They began to establish an African American identity.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That was going to be some of my questions, because I'm looking at your little collage up here, and it's a very a very diverse range of kids up there.
Yeah, we got 12 grandkids, and the standard joke is no two are the same color.
No. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How many kids do you have?
We have 6 kids.
6.
Yeah. 4 are adopted.
Yeah. 3
are African American. And we did emergency foster care in Alameda County for 5 years with crack babies. You want to hear an interesting story? We had 21 kids. Number 20 was Brandy, and we would normally get these kids adopted and into other homes. Usually a relative or someone would adopt them. But Brandy, there was no place for her to go. She was number 9, I think, from the same mother, and up through 8 had all been taken, and nobody else wanted another kid.
Yeah.
So we tried getting her adopted out, and we couldn't. So we're only supposed to have these children for 6 months because we were emergency. We were supposed to take them through withdrawal from crack,
right,
and then get them replaced. So we tried the route of becoming long-term foster care, but the county needed us as because we were licensed to handle medically fragile kids. So
You're on the emergency list.
Yep.
That's a prize spot.
yes. So they wouldn't let us become long-term. So we went away on a prayer retreat. And
it became long-term.
yeah, God's made it pretty clear we were to adopt her.
Wow.
Which we knew was going to be really, really hard.
Yes.
Because the county does not like biracial adoptions. The black community does not like biracial adoptions. In fact, there's a very high degree of reverse discrimination.
Interesting.
Yeah, where they do not want their kids. So if we'd put her in long term, it would have possibly been a grandmother in Oakland with 5 or 6 of these kids, and that would have been her source of income. And it's just not the kind of arrangement that you want.
No.
And the county, the system's so broken. It's tragic. And then you've got these movie stars that go to Africa and adopt kids, and come back. Why don't you go to Richmond?
They're right here. They're right here.
But they were born addicted to crack, or they've got fetal alcohol syndrome, and that it takes work and it doesn't fit the picture, But there's thousands of kids, thousands. So we made the decision. We notified the county we were going to try a foster adopt, and they said fine. And a week later, we got a call. We had never had 2 kids in our home, but we were licensed for 2 beds. And they finally called us up and said, we really need you to take a second one. And in our minds, we're thinking, okay, Brandy's now ours anyway. So she'd been here over a year.
Right.
And we said, okay. So Cheryl went down to Richmond and picked up this little guy. Came to us, no first name, baby boy Bonner.
Wow.
And a little over 2 pounds. Could hold him in your hand.
Yeah, that's right there.
Yeah. And so the county called us up after about a week and said, we need you to name him. And we're thinking, well, this is a pretty incredible responsibility.
We're name a human?
Name a human, an African-American, where the name has,
that's important.
Has a whole different significance. We didn't want him walking around with Bob. So we started doing some research to try to figure out, what family roots and everything. And
yeah.
And Cheryl came to me after a day or so and she says, here, you're not going to believe this. It's Brandy's full brother.
Really?
Yeah.
The one that you're just adopting.
Yes. This new child that had come into our home was her full brother. And out of all of the relationships that mother had and all the relationships that the father had, those are the only 2 with the same 2 parents. Out of a total of 17 kids, we have the only 2.
And I'm sure the county didn't know that and
had no idea. Otherwise, they never would have put them together, because once they're together, you can't separate them, and once they're together, they're basically unadoptable, or you have such a huge time trying to figure out where to put them, because nobody wants 2.
Yeah. I have a feeling you did, though.
Well, it's not like we can say to Brandy, well, we had your brother here for a while.
Yeah.
Now we're adopting 2.
Dude. That's just it. That seems impossible. But
yeah, and then it was a slam dunk because the county knew nobody was going to adopt 2.
Yeah, you can't. This is the best possible scenario for them.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got down to the courthouse. This tall black judge, 6'8", massive bass voice, towered I used to be 6'2", I'm looking up at this guy. And he looks down and he says, "Do you have any idea what you're getting yourself in for?" I said, "No." No. He said, "Well, at least you're honest." And he said, "Good luck.
Wow.
You're going to need it." And we did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was not easy. Still isn't easy.
And so the you ended up adopting both.
Mm-hmm.
In what order was that? So there was your first adoption, but you had other kids.
We had another older adopted girl by that point.
Okay.
And so this was number 4 and 5.
Okay.
And then number 6 came along later.
Okay. Gosh. And so who was the two that were in here when I got here? These one lady and looks like a younger guy. Who is that?
That's the wife of number 6 and her son.
Okay. This is one of these. That's the one on the top with the suit. Is that him? Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Wow. So you have a whole tribe at this point.
We've got a football team.
Man.
Yep.
That is beautiful. I had no idea. I didn't even know that about you. Gosh. So I hadn't considered the concept that like the interracial adoption isn't encouraged.
Right.
What are the stumbling blocks with that makes it an issue?
Whatever community the child is coming out of has great concerns that they're going to be able to grow up authentically integrated into that culture.
Okay.
Which is a very real and very valid concern, because you want the children to know who they are, who they were born to be.
Yeah.
And how each culture, although, we call America a melting pot, we had to make sure they understood the Black heritage. And we had to help them understand a part of the struggle as well,
Yep.
which is very real. And during the riots, Brandy, who's now 30, was accidentally, she's living now in Virginia Beach, was in the Navy for a number of years.
Okay. Wow.
Very self-sufficient individual. So the riots are going on across the United States, and she goes through a stop sign that she wasn't aware was there, gets pulled over by a white policeman.
Mm-hmm.
And was scared out of her mind.
Right.
Cop got up to the window and she was shaking. So it wasn't. It's a good thing there's a God. And people have asked us over and over, why did you do it?
Yeah.
It's not something you set out to do. You it's walking by faith. It's hearing, agreeing, and doing. Whatever God puts in front of you. And he never said it's going to be easy.
No, it actually says that it won't. Pretty clearly.
Pretty much, yep.
Yeah. Man, thanks for listening.
It's not always easy.
No. Well, and it doesn't seem like you do it to signal your virtue to the world.
No.
But it signals virtue.
And it has transformed us.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I mean, I'd love to know. Like, I mean, we could talk for hours about adoptions and all this. Would you? I mean, is there any regret?
Mm-mm. We in the second one, Brandy's brother, we had huge issues, failure to thrive, and I mean, you know, when you take these kids through withdrawal from crack, it's not pleasant,
No.
and there's fetal alcohol involved. I mean, and there's just all kinds of issues that go along with that. We had to teach him how to eat. He had to have therapy to learn how to move his tongue, to move food around his mouth.
Wow.
It would take 2 hours to feed him dinner sometimes. But you know, he's off on his own. He was in the Army for quite a few years, and there's some cognitive challenges that go along with that. We asked a counselor at one point when because they were both in intensive counseling and different types of therapy growing up, and we asked therapists at one point, so, you know, where do kids like this normally end up? And they said, well, majority end up in juvie home.
And then prison beyond that,
Yeah.
probably, right? Yeah. Unacceptable.
Yeah, but that's the society we live in.
Yeah.
You know. So no, we wouldn't do it different. We're totally different people as a result, and I wouldn't give that up for anything.
Yeah, that's kind of my next question. I mean, obviously you have drastically altered the direction of their lives through that. But I'm just, and there's probably 1,000 ways, but how has it impacted you guys and changed, like you and Cheryl specifically, like how eye-opening?
Well, it brought about a unity in a sense and a purpose in us that we wouldn't have had any other way. It knocked a whole bunch of edges off of us. It gave me, it's a standard joke when I was a number of years ago when the spiritual gifts were all the rage, and people were trying to figure out what my gift was, and a survey was produced by the Fuller Church Growth Organization. It's called the Modified Wagner-Hautz Church Growth Gift Survey, and there was 80 potential gifts listed on that thing.
Wow.
No, so I forget how many gifts, but there was, it was scored 1 to 80. So out of each, you get a 1 to 80 score, and I scored pretty high on some of them, but on compassion I scored a 2 out of 80. and my friends wondered, when I reported that to them, wondered how I had scored so high.
Where'd this 2 come from?
Exactly. Well, that's no longer the case. Going through the whole Black Lives Matter events. I understand the history in our country, but I don't understand how anybody could have let that history happen.
Yeah.
It's unfathomable to me. but it's a very real part of what we have to work with. It has given me, I guess, a deeper appreciation of what the issues are, because I see it. It's in my family.
Yeah.
I see both sides of it in some ways. And I've got a perspective that I never would have had it.
No.
Any other way.
Well, that's one thing that's been kind of presented to me. I mean, because I've grown up in the Bay Area, and definitely not in a white-dominated environment most of the time. But that doesn't mean I can really understand somebody else's context. It means I might be blind in some ways to the greater stories that are going on, in the narrative. But you can't. You have a window into that world that a lot of people just would. How do you get that? Like you can't. You can't simulate that. I could talk to people all day, but I'll never actually be able to see through their eyes.
Right.
And you're about as close as it gets, really.
But even then, we've got so much more to learn.
Yeah. But I think that's a win in itself. You don't know, and you don't think you do.
Right.
There's a humbleness about it that I think that goes really far in my mind. Yeah. How's that time? Do you have to?
I've got about 10 minutes.
Okay. Man, thank you for sharing all that. It's probably exhausting for you, but
it runs.
I appreciate it.
It runs pretty deep.
It does. Well, it should. I'm glad it does. Yeah, I'll say it again. Thank you for listening to God, for not quenching that. It's not about you, but there's a legacy that's come from that obedience, I think. I bet Thanksgivings are a blast around here.
We had a funny thing happen, because the children of those who were born addicted to crack can be, let's just call them, interesting in and of themselves. So we had a Thanksgiving here where we had, at that point, 9 grandkids.
Okay.
And we had all 9 in this room. And
it still looks like...
Well, yeah. Cheryl,
okay. Like you fixed whatever happened.
Cheryl and I turned to each other when that was all over and said, I don't think that's going to happen again. And we're speaking from the perspective of, logistically, it's probably never going to happen again.
Yeah. You have to rent a venue.
Oh my gosh. Let's just call it a zoo and leave it at that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something else.
Yeah. Gosh.
Love them to death, but
yeah,
let's love them together in 2s or 3s, not in groups of 9.
Small doses. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to, as we get to the end of these interviews, I love asking people, just, you're still learning, you're not done. So I'd love to know, like, what is God working on with you now?
That's kind of a funny question, actually.
Yeah.
I was when I was at the church, I was part of the ordination council, so I was part of the group that took new candidates through the ordination process, which, if you really think about it, for somebody that's got my only degree was in music, that's actually kind of funny. But so I was mentoring some ordination candidates, and I was on the board that actually put them through the ringer and asked them the questions. challenged some, let's call them interesting theological beliefs along the way. But we met every month, and it was up in Woodland, and so I would be driving up 80, and I would take that exit off to Woodland, and so I had to go to Canada for something, and I was by myself driving. And this was shortly after leaving the church, and as I was, right in the middle of struggling with post-separation anxiety and all those things you go through when you leave something that's been such a fundamental part of your life for so long. And I found myself starting to take that exit, because there I was, just automatically going to Woodland, and I realized I snapped myself back out and kept driving up 80, and I started to feel really sorry for myself, and I said to the Lord, so am I ever going to be in ministry again? And once again he spoke as clearly as if he'd been sitting in the passenger seat, and he said, mind your own business.
Yeah, that's good. And
I laughed, and I kept going. And he is using me in ways that, it's hard to, when you've led a large congregation and you see yourself in that role, that becomes your way of ministering, and it's really hard sitting in the back row of a church, not doing anything. In your mind, you're not doing anything. You're just another person in a congregation.
Yeah.
But I have to realize that faith is still in action, and faith is hearing, agreeing, and doing. And there's no end of things that God is saying, and there's no end of things he's calling us to do and be every single day as it unfolds. So, part of my struggle is, when you've been inside the church for that long, you know a lot. You know both sides of the coin, and when you see what's behind the curtain, if you will, you can get a little cynical sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I have to constantly guard against that, and just wake up every morning and say, God, what do you have for me today? Do I miss teaching? Absolutely. I think that's the thing I miss the most. So as a result, I do a lot of teaching. I do a lot of webinars, but it's now real estate related. I'm on a touring circuit. I've spoke across the country. And ironically, to a much larger audience in many cases than at the church. So,
the magic of the internet.
Yeah, well, even some large venues, at national conventions and things.
Right.
So I'm just walking it out a day at a time. What God has tomorrow, today.
Yeah. I thought you were getting ready to say you're moving to Boise or something. I was ready for it.
Not Boise.
Uh-oh.
Tacoma.
Okay.
Yep.
As in Nebraska?
No, as in Tacoma, Washington.
Okay. Yep. Is there a Tacoma, Nebraska? Yeah.
I don't know.
I think there is.
Yeah.
We'll say there is so I don't look down.
Never been there.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So that means some significant adjustments with the business and...
it means minor adjustments. One of the things we've learned, COVID's in some ways been a blessing, because it's taught us that we can do most of what we do from anywhere on the planet.
Right there. Yeah.
So I've essentially been working out of my house for the last year anyway, so it doesn't really matter where that is.
Wow.
And we've got a very large team.
Yeah.
And so I've got some incredible leaders. I've got a leadership core of 5 highly gifted, highly talented individuals who can run this quite fine without me being physically present.
Wow. And why Tacoma?
Grandkids.
Oh, perfect.
Yep. The largest assemblage of grandkids in one location happens to be there.
That's perfect.
Yep. And Cheryl wants to be a full-time grandmother. So we made a deal a few years ago. We set a date in stone, toughest real estate negotiation I've ever been a part of,
Yes.
where we agreed that June 30th, 2021, we would be moving to Tacoma
That's coming.
like a freight train.
Wow.
Hmm.
Congratulations.
Which is why this house is all tore up
That's
right
why,
now.
yeah, that's why there's dudes
we're
burning
getting-
concrete everywhere.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And we've got this going on right now for 3 houses. Because we had a house up there
Right.
we've had for the last number of years that we were going to move to.
Okay.
But then we found a historic property a minute and a half away from the kids, built in 1928. It looks like it's out of an English fairy tale,
Cool.
complete with a turret and everything.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, I'll show you a picture later.
Yes.
So we're getting that one fixed up and ready while we get the other one ready to sell.
Yeah.
And then we're getting this ready to sell. So we got this going on 3 fronts right now.
Okay. Busy season then.
It is indeed.
Well, man. Okay. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of that crazy season to sit down with me on
You're
this
welcome.
little thing and share your story. Yeah. I the funny thing about doing this is, I care that people are listening, but by the end of them, I'm like, I feel like I get more out of it than anybody. What a blessing it's been hearing your story. I'll have to take a couple hours and just think about your life.
Yeah.
At a minimum, talking to you has changed me a little bit. This is awesome. Yeah, I wish you the best on the next chapter. How fun
Thank you.
with the grandkids. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Gosh. And you're far from out of ministry if you're going to be a local granddad. So
Yeah.
get ready.
Right.
Yeah, the zoo's coming to you.
Pretty much.
Right on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, bless you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
Well done. All right. Thank you so much for listening today, and thanks again, Carl, for coming on the show. Man, what a story! Like I said, that this man's lived like 4 lives and he's not done. I honestly, on the way home from his house, truthfully, I went and picked up a nice New York steak. I don't have a sous vide, but I'm gonna do my best. I was inspired. Thank you for listening. There's plenty more where this came from. You can find all of the previous podcasts on greatstories.podbean.com, or of course you can stream it from Apple Podcasts, from Stitcher. You can even find them on YouTube. They're all over the place. Listen to it wherever you want. But whatever you do, just listen to it. And of course, share the show with anyone who you think might be interested or blessed to hear these things. If you want to come on the show, I want to have you on the show. Get in touch with me. Shoot me an email at thegreatstoriespodcast@gmail.com. So thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. God bless. All right. Hey, I'm still here, and apparently so are you. So either you knew this was coming, or you're surprised by it. But welcome to the little bonus section for the podcast. This is a part of the show where I just kind of say whatever's on my mind. I tell weird stories or say inspirational things, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm shocked that you've listened to this whole thing up to this point. So feel free to not listen to this if you don't like. But as I was driving away from Carl's house today, there was one thing that he said in particular that resonated with me specifically. And as he was reflecting on his time as a pastor, and as he'd moved on from that, and when he was looking like for a new church, he said something that was really interesting to me, that it's hard to kind of sit in the back row and observe something that you were so very much a part of for a long time. And man, I didn't say anything during the interview, but I find that to be extremely true. As many of you know, I worked for Resonate Church for just over 5 years in the children's ministry, and I truly believe that it was a deep calling that I was answering, to go and to serve and to teach kids the gospel, and I loved every second of it. I didn't like all of the things that go along with it. Of course, there's difficulties, but when it comes to, like, the calling is to teach kids the Bible, and I absolutely loved doing that. And I felt like I was very gifted at doing it. I feel like I'm good at taking complex theological things and making them understandable and relatable to kids. I think it's a gift. And well, as COVID has gone down, and the church, many churches, and ours in particular, at least not in particular, but specifically ours, has also shut down, and we haven't had an open children's ministry for just about a year now. And just because of that, my job just doesn't really happen. I mean, there's no ministry to be had, and we're doing some online things and all that, but there's nothing going on there that justifies a full-time position. On top of that, that just the pace that I was on was not healthy. I was working 7 days a week between 4 days at the church, 3 days trucking. Maybe had 1 day off a month, sometimes half a day, and that pattern wasn't working either. So, and as Carl said, I felt like I reached a point with it where, like, something has to change. Gosh, there's never a good time to leave, but boy, that's a pretty good time to leave. If just I'm not abandoning anything, there's nothing happening. And I found that, man, having been on that side of things, having led a ministry and been a part of that, it's been really hard to step back and not be involved, to not have an influence, to not be really exercising this gift that I think God has given me and called me to use, of teaching. And I feel like I'm in a similar spot where, as Carl said, as he's driving along, talking to God, like, what's next? Like, what are you going to do with me? Am I ever going to be in ministry again? And God's answer to him was like, mind your own business. And I feel like that's sort of the answer I've been getting too. I don't think any of us, that there is nobody who can tell you, oh, here's what God's going to do with me. Here, let me lay this out year by year and day by day and event by event. Like, that's not even possible. And but I think some times are just less predictable than others, and times are just more hazy, foggy, harder to see than others. And I think I'm going through one of those times. And it's just really comforting to hear from Carl that our job isn't to know everything. Really, this is what I'm taking from it. God knows what he is doing. We don't have to actually know the whole story. We don't have to know our role in it. Our job is to be faithful. That's it. Available. What did he say? That faith is believing and following and doing. Believing, knowing. I forget what he said. Go back. Someone text it to me. But that our job is just to be faithful and answer the call in whatever form it comes. And for now, for me, it means kind of stepping back a bit. But in the meantime, my focus is on developing my character, developing my relationship with Christ, developing my relationship with my girlfriend. I think that's a really important thing for me at this point. And pouring into the folks that I'm still involved in ministry-wise, making the little videos for Sunday and leading my high school senior guys. And that's what I'm going to focus on. And then, hey, at which point God clears up the calling and tells me what's next, let's go. So if you're of the mind to be praying for the show or for me, that would be the thing. Just that I would develop the character that I need to answer the next call, whatever that is, whenever that is. So thanks for listening. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your ears. Love you all. See you later.